All right, please introduce yourself, state your name and DOC number for the record.
Calvin Couvillion, DOC 470425.
All right, Calvin, my name is Brendan Kelsey. Along with me is Miss Bonnie Jackson. Ms. Cheryl Nelson will be your panel. I'll explain the process to you. We'll read some information to the record, have a parole interview, ask you some questions. You can respond. At the end, you can make a statement and take a vote. You understand the question?
Yes, sir.
And we have a good many guests here today that be able to speak at the appropriate time. We have Carrie Myers, Emily Ratner, who speak at the end of after you. I suspect you want to wrap up at the end. Tracy Calais, Abigail Couvillion, Allison Couvillion, Laura Cutler, Mark Wybrand, Felix Bourgeois, Jay Bourgeois, Denise Hewlett, Vanessa William, Asha Harbison, Heather Kirkendall, Blake Leish, Christopher Kirkendall. And then we have Miss Sharon Roberts, Lucy Boutique, Wayne Rogers, Scott Ferguson, Judy Ferguson, David Rogers, Eddie Rovers. Thank you all for being here. We'll speak at the appropriate time. All right, Calvin Couvillion, DOC number 470425. You're a first class offender. Parole eligibility date 2/16/2024. Good time date 3/3/2028. Full term date 2/18/2030. 28-year sentence for manslaughter and simple escape. Does that sound correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, would you please answer Ms. Renata's questions?
Good morning, Ms. Couvillion. How you doing?
Doing fine, ma'am. Thank you.
Good. How old are you, sir?
I'm 41 now.
And how long you been in jail?
I've been in prison going on 22 years.
You were 19 or 20 at the time of the offense?
I had just made 20. Yes, ma'am.
Well, tell us what happened.
So the night of my crime, my fiance and I were moving from my apartment down the street, not far, maybe a mile from my apartment to a house. Unfortunately, all we had was her car because my truck was in the shop. So we were moving some furniture back and forth, and we really needed a truck to be able to move some big things. So the only person I can think about to contact was my friend Justin Stein, who lived in LaPlace. And so I contacted him, and unfortunately he was delivering pizza that night at Domino's, but he did refer me to his brother Brandon, who he had said was with a friend who owned the truck. And so he gave me his number, and I called Brandon, and it wound up being 3 guys that came over to my apartment and met my fiance and I, who was moving. It was Brandon and his cousin Timmy, who I did not expect to come. And they were in Jim Rogers' truck, whom I had met for the first time. And so we had all moved things back and forth from my apartment down the street to my house. At some point in time, after everything was pretty much in place in my home and my apartment was empty, my fiance Tracy went back to her home with her mom to take care of my youngest daughter, Abigail. And at some point, me and the guys smoked a joint, and we had everything set up with the futon next to my television, and we were taking turns playing video games. And at some point, Jim wanted to get up and leave and go home. And he got up and shook my hand, and I said, "It was nice to meet you, and I appreciate you helping me." And he went to the door, and Brandon jumped up and went behind him and pulled him back. And I was sitting on a chair, and Timmy was on the futon to my left. And Brandon pulled Jim back towards me, and I moved my chair out of the way because it was a closed area with the television in front of me. And as I moved the chair back, I felt a pop to my face, and I looked up, and it was Jim moving his arms. And I got up out of reflex and hit Jim a few times. And I paused, not trying to fathom what's going on right now, because there was no argument between anyone, so I didn't understand what was going on, why there was this conflict. And then next thing I know, Brandon has Jim in the other room, and as I approached where they were, I saw the belt for the first time, because the whole house was dark. There were no lights on, only the television, and I could see from the bedroom with no curtains. I saw for the first time that Brandon had the belt around Jim's neck. And that's when I realized that Brandon was trying to kill Jim. And now I realize that I feel that I helped kill Jim because I hit Jim and because I helped Brandon cover up this horrible crime. I realize now that I did help kill Jim. And I know that I could have done a lot more. I could have stopped Brandon. I could have pushed Brandon off of Jim. I could have called the police. I had my cell phone on me. I could have did many things, but instead I did not. I chose to be reckless and foolish and to help him cover up this horrible crime.
And so why didn't you help?
I think because I was just young and foolish, reckless, and my thinking now, reflecting on back then, I obviously was being selfish, because all I could think about was them getting out of my home. I just wanted them out of there. And like I say, selfish because I didn't care where they were going. And I should have called the police. I should have made sure that Jim got help, and I did not. I aided.
So you've been in jail for about 21 years, and so you've had a lot of time to think about the events of that day, that night. So you hit him, Jim, after he was restrained.
Yes, ma'am.
And have you come to any determination as to why this happened?
All I could imagine, it was out of pure reflex from being hit myself.
No, I meant the whole crime. Why did it take place? You
I'm
said
not-
you were trying to leave, and then it all happened.
I don't know why Brandon did it. I don't know why he.
So you had a jury trial. You were originally charged with second-degree murder,
Yes, ma'am.
and the jury reduced it to manslaughter.
Yes, ma'am.
And you have a mandatory release date, good time date in March of 2028. Your parole eligibility is February of next year. So if you were favorable today, you wouldn't get out till then. Tell us, as you can imagine, there's very strong opposition to consideration for early release, and we'll hear some of that a little later today. We do have in the record a letter from the sheriff. Strong opposition, believes you should serve out the remainder sentence, and that he does not support parole. But tell us, if you would, please, over the last 21 years, what have you been doing?
Well, ma'am, I have been, as you know, I don't get good time. So I've been, over my whole incarceration, I've just been trying to find ways to be a better person and to develop as a man, and no longer an irresponsible boy, but to take the programs that DCI has. And when I first came here, I enrolled and got my GED, and then try to help others as well obtain their GED by being a tutor. And then after doing that, I immediately enrolled in the VOTEC and got certified as an auto body collision repair worker or technician. And then I also, upon graduating from that, became a tutor to help other people obtain their certifications as well. I try to help people. Being in a situation, I've worked in the infirmary with the hospice program, helping older ones and infirm ones who are pretty much on their last dying days, their last days here with us, trying to help those people out. And also with the DB court, I would help in the past with DB court. Before I made trustee, I was on the compound, and I would help the colonels out when they would have Spanish speakers, and they couldn't really understand what they were saying during court. I would help out with translations. I've taken many different programs, as I said, to help me become rehabilitated and change my ways of thinking, my rebellious ways of thinking, to just help become a better person and to help those, to be an example also for my children, an example for those, for my loved ones on the outside that do observe me, that do keep in contact with me, that they can see that I am a better person and they can be proud of me for the changes that I've made, although incarcerated, although I am here and not into society, I am a better person now, and I'm constantly developing to become a better person for that day when I do come home into society. I can help out. I can be an asset in my community, whether it be to children or an asset to anyone that I can help them learn from my experience of what not to do, and I can be a living example to those ones. But I also
You mentioned as soon as you got there, or shortly thereafter, you got your GED. What grade did you complete in school?
I dropped out in 11th grade.
Why?
Honestly, I was smoking weed, and I had a part-time job at a car dealership after school and on summertime, but I was skipping out of school and missing school, and so I really felt like it didn't make any sense to stay in school because I was wasting my time, so I quit and worked full time.
Any other drugs besides marijuana?
I'm sorry?
Any other drugs?
I had taken other drugs before, but marijuana, I was dependent on marijuana.
So the night of this murder, were there any drugs or alcohol involved?
Well, we had been drinking Smirnoff Ice. I had actually one beer that night, one Smirnoff Ice. The guys had been drinking, it was Mardi Gras, and they had been drinking before showing up in my house, and they did bring some Smirnoff Ice.
So you
I
just
found out,
drink?
I had one drink, yes, ma'am. I found out after the fact, after my arrest, that my landlady, she showed up at some point in time at the house and sold Brandon Stein some cocaine that he supposedly had did at my home, which I did not know at the time.
Right, so your prison record looks pretty good. You've only had, in I could see, in the 20+ years, 3 write-ups. The last was in 2008, which is good. You have a low risk score, and I do make note that you have, your volunteer work, the community service work you've done within the prison community. You have lots of letters of support, but you do have opposition that's expressed by the district attorney's office, the law enforcement that I mentioned. So why do you think, given all that and the opposition that is there, that you're aware of, why do you think we ought to consider you for early release?
Well, because, ma'am, I'm very deeply remorseful for my involvement in this crime. And I'm just ready to give back to society. I'm ready to go out and be a living example of my rehabilitation, of how I have changed from being a reckless, irresponsible boy, 20-year-old boy, to a man now, and just to be a better example into society, as I have done here in prison. And I just thank you all for giving me this chance today to be here and to express my sorrow and my remorse to all those that I have affected. I cannot say enough how sorry I am for what I have done.
So all the classes you've taken, you mentioned a few, which one had the most impact and why?
I really enjoyed Thinking for a Change, which was facilitated by Mr. James Duvall, who's here with us today. I feel like that class was really hands-on for me personally because it had dialogue. It had a lot of dialogue, which helped allow me to see a different, as the class is called Thinking for a Change, it allows you to have a different perspective to be able to change your way of thinking. For example, we would have dialogue which had negative and positive outlooks. So it would allow you to sit back if someone was to offend me a certain way, whether I'm on the yard playing basketball and someone gets offensive and wants to fight, it allows me to step back and to really see that the bigger picture of things, and to understand that my actions and my reactions not only affect me, but affect those who love me and those who are around me. And so it allows me to really to think more, not just for myself, but to think for others. So I really enjoyed that class.
Tell us about the simple escape on your record.
So at that point in time, I had just made 21. I had a court-appointed lawyer who advised me to take 40 years for manslaughter or go to trial and get a life sentence. At that point in time, I had gotten into a few fights in the parish jail. As you could imagine, there was a lot of tension, a lot of stress. Everybody in the jail pretty much was facing a life sentence on violent crimes. So I felt as a young kid, I was trapped. I didn't understand the judicial system. I didn't respect the laws either. And my scope on life was so short, not even understanding that I would once again jeopardize my family's lives by making this decision. I had no plans at all as to when I got out, I wouldn't be able to stay in contact with my family. So it was another foolish, childish, reckless decision that I made.
What you mentioned plans. What are your plans now? No matter when you get out, you're gonna get out. What are your plans?
Yes, ma'am. My plans right now are to receive the support from LPP, the Louisiana Parole Project in Baton Rouge. As you know, I have a great support system with my family and friends, many homes waiting on me. However, I feel that from experience from guys that I know that have gone to Parole Project, Warden Bickham has told me how the Parole Project is a very big support, my attorney as well. And so although I have family support, I look forward to going to Parole Project and to have them help me to enroll in certain classes, not only at the Parole Project, but for when I do become into society, to help me with my transition to go back into society, certain classes that they feel that I may need upon evaluating me, whatever the classes may be. I look forward to doing that.
All right, what happened to the Parole Project?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Beyond that.
Okay, upon release from Parole Project, my fiance, Tracy Kaye, her boss, David Wascom, is an owner for Turnkey Construction in Holden, Louisiana. And he is offering a job to be able to go out and do renovation on homes, building homes, and which is good because right now Warden Bickham has allowed me to be doing that type of work, to go out in the free world and get hands-on experience with homes and industrial, commercial buildings, to be able to work with that and just to get ready.
Warden Bickham, what can you add?
Well, I'm gonna correct something real quick. I think he didn't say it quite right. He's learned skills in here, so maybe in the future he can go out and work on homes and stuff. I think he made it sound like I let him go out and work on homes. I don't. But I tell you, I got to talk about Calvin just for a minute. It's absolutely terrible what took place, but I can only speak to what's happened inside the prison. So how he's been here, and I'm gonna tell you, he has been a very good inmate in the prison system. As you mentioned, he's only had 3 write-ups in 21 years. The last one was 2008. So he absolutely stays out of trouble. He is in our honor housing. He stays in our honor housing. We have him there. He's a Pride member. He, of course, is a member of our Pillars program, which is a little trying to helps with that. He's going with the Parole Project and stuff, and he's learned some skills. What he's talking about is he's been a carpenter lately. He's a trustee. He didn't mention that. He is a trustee here that helps with the carpenter crew going and doing some things like that. So he does hobby crafts and stuff. I know one person fussed because he in a joking way, he drew some unicorns on there without the ears, and I think the little girls were upset about it and stuff. So he's got some learning to do on there, but he's really done well inside the prison. I have to speak for him on that.
All right, we'll hear from Mr. Kerry Myers now.
Good morning, Kerry Myers with Louisiana Parole Project. Yes, Couvillion is a client of Parole Project. We're prepared to offer him our services should he get granted today. It's obvious just listening to Mr. Couvillion speak that he isn't the 20-year-old who made many poor decisions. He is a mature man. He's also at this point in his life ready. This is a perfect time. He's very employable at his age. He's got the ability to sustain work and stability for a long time. He's shown stability while he's been incarcerated during his time, particularly living in honor housing, being a trustee, and the programs that he's taken. So we are prepared to help him through things like technology and connecting him to all his services. We're prepared to get him a mental health and substance abuse assessment. And I know that he will comply with any of those recommendations. I think that Mr. Couvillion is just at the prime age and showing based on his record to be released now so that he can actually get his life back together and live a full, complete life and reach his full potential. So we would ask this board to grant his release today.
All right, thank you. Ms. Ratner, you're going to follow, but finish up the end, correct? After he
Yeah.
speaks? Okay, great.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, we'll hear from Ms. Sharon. Is it Ms. Sharon Rogers? I'm sorry. Is that correct? Thank you. I apologize for misstating it earlier.
I'm Jim Rogers' mother, Jerry. I said you all have read the letters and know who away my son was taken. It was a senseless murder, and both Brandon Stein and Calvin Couvillion facilitated. There were two attackers, and Jim had no chance. Calvin Couvillion showed no mercy to Jim as he begged for his life. His life meant nothing to him, a human life meant nothing to him. He had helped Calvin that night move furniture to his new residence. He helped him, and this led to his death. Calvin didn't care about human life. In fact, he chuckled when recalling that murder. It may be funny to him, but it was no joke to any of us. And we are a strong family. Several of them are here today. Some came from Tennessee, some from Texas, Washington, D.C. There's no closure for the pain in our hearts. Jim will ever be 17 and away from us. I listened to all the things that Calvin accomplished in prison. But one thing has not changed. When he tells what happened that night, he's not telling the truth. As he was being strangled by Brandon Stein, he intentionally punched Jim several times. There wasn't any accident. So what's in this man's heart? Words are easy. I don't trust him. I think he's a narcissist, a liar, lacks moral values, and does not accept responsibility for his actions. And that obviously has still not changed. He doesn't show empathy for others. He can say the words that people want to hear. There's no true remorse in his heart. Jim got up to leave, and he restrained him from doing so. So tell the truth, Calvin. I do not think he should be released to be around law-abiding people. And I ask that parole be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. I will hear from Mr. Wayne Rogers.
Calvin's here, my son is not. I have to speak for him. Is he here? Still going over this in my head. I'll be Calvin. just spontaneously fall off and hit my son multiple times. Is this really believable? I ask you. Timothy and Brandon had planned this. It's in the court records. Had planned this for over a week. They talked about it when they were together. And Calvin, yeah, they're gonna ask my son to help him move Calvin over to his house, pick up all his stuff and help him move his things and his family into that house. And then he's just gonna shake his hands and then step back until he swings wildly and hits, and he's gonna punch him multiple times in the face. This makes no sense. It can't be what happened. He's still not telling the whole truth. He's making everything look best for him, just so he can get out of here. And so all I can ask you is do us a favor and please measure the words he says. Look between the lines about who he's really truly talking about. Is he talking about Jim? Is he talking about the family? Does he have true trueness in his heart? That he told everything the truth? That he's opening up everything in true remorse? How can you be remorseful if your story still doesn't make sense and yet you won't clarify enough for us to know what really happened that night and why he jumped in on this execution of my son? So I ask you please to consider that. He was given punishment. He should serve the full time for that punishment because of the nature of the crime and what he did to my son. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Miss Betty Rogers.
I ask us all, how can we now believe a word that Calvin Couvillion is speaking today? He just gave it the summary and he left out, it's in the court record, that Brandon and Calvin discussed murdering Jim 2 days before. Check it, it's in both the court record and in the appeals document. I've just read them all. And he is a lying king from February 13, 2002 until his sentencing. Under oath, he lied. And if that man is today using the word reflex, he said reflex. Take a look at the photos of Jim's face when his body was recovered. He has made up this whole story. Judy Cullen, the prosecutor, she stood up in the court beside him and said, shaking her arm, show me how a reflex works. Calvin said, Brandon strangling my nephew Jim bumped into Calvin and he jumped up and in a reflex punched Jim 3 times. Julie said, how do you punch with a reflex 3 times? It's not possible with the human body. That's not a reflex. And Calvin today in 2023 is still saying reflex. He has not taken responsibility for it. He's lying. Again, look at the photo of Jim's face. And he lied from the very beginning. He made up this story. He was in Bourbon Street. Jim shows up, moves his furniture. Calvin leaves, and then later Jim's gone and his mattress is gone. Calvin already knew that Jim was dead and that his mattress went with the body in the back of the truck. He didn't mention that he hopped on the tailgate of the truck and rode with the truck with Jim's body behind him from his new house back to his apartment. And then they took my nephew's body and threw it in a swamp. And Calvin knew that's what they were going to do. They were going to dispose of it. And Calvin gave him their mattress. And when they found Jim's body 3 days later, can you imagine what our family went through in those days? That mattress matched Calvin's mattress. Calvin helped put it in the truck. And Calvin, I'm going to repeat this, 2 days before that, Brandon discussed killing. So that's great. If he's rehabilitated, we support it. We support it 100% that he can do that rehabilitation in prison. If that man is still using this bogus reflex, look at Julie Cullen's words during the trial. Reflex. today in 2023. That man does not deserve to get 1 day early at the prison, because until he learns to let go of the reflex and tell the truth, as Brandon wrapped his belt around Jim's neck. At first, he thought they were joking, then he begged for his life, and then he died. Calvin was punching him while Jim was begging for his life. That's not a reflex. I just ask you. That man deserves, and he will be better off for it if he serves his full sentence. This is a very difficult day for all of us, and we're grateful that you're listening to our side of the story. Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you for your comment. So sorry. All right. Calvin, would you like to make a statement on your behalf?
Yes, sir, I would.
Speak to the board.
I know that the word sorry is it's not enough. It can never bring back Jim. It can never bring him back. And I know that no matter what I can do, it will never take back the horrible thing that I did do that day. Me hitting Jim and me helping Brandon cover it up by removing Jim from my home and placing him in his truck. I understand that no matter what I do, no matter what I say, it will help anything, but I cannot express how very regretful, how very sorry I am for the person that I was then. And I hope that you can understand that I'm not that person now, that I have learned from my mistake. I have learned from that reckless person that I was then. And I understand now that I was very wrong and being lawless and helping out in what I did. I'm very, very sorry for the lives that I have harmed. There's so many lives from what I have done that day. And I know I will never understand the impact of harm that I did to the Rogers family and many others as well, loved ones. But I just ask that you can please allow me to display my sorrow, to display my remorse when I do come into society. And I hope that you can eventually please see my actions here in prison, that I have not been a violent man. I've had many chances to be violent among violent people, but I have not, because I want to display a better person. I want to display a better way of life in here so that when I do come home, I can continue doing that. I can continue being a law-abiding citizen. And I am very sorry for what I did do as a child back then.
All right, thank you. All right, Miss Emily, would you like to wrap it up?
I would, Commissioner, but would it be possible for Ms. Kaye to speak before I do?
Sure. She'd like to make a brief statement. She wasn't on the list to speak, but if she wants to make a brief statement.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Tracy Kaye. I'm Calvin's fiance and mother of his 2 daughters, Allison and Abigail. We're all very emotional and look forward to the possibility of Calvin coming home. When we were teenagers, I knew Calvin very well. He was hot-headed, immature, and reckless. He didn't think things through before acting or reacting. His immaturity led him to make a huge mistake on that awful night. And then we both made even more mistakes when we tried to cover up what had happened instead of immediately telling the truth and trying to get help. Calvin and I are both so regretful for our part in what happened. We both wish we could have made better decisions, and we will always fault ourselves for not choosing better. As parents ourselves, we agonize over what we have put the Rogers family through. I'm so sorry for my role. There aren't enough words to express the guilt and remorse that I and we feel. We will both spend the rest of our lives wishing we could change the terrible decisions we made back then. As adults, we have tried very hard to teach our daughters that every move they make matters, and have used our past shortcomings in life to try to strengthen their morals. They understand what their father did, and they know he's paying the price his crime demands. Today, Calvin is a better man. He has grown immensely and has taken every opportunity to learn and better himself. While gaining good time is a major incentive for people to take classes in prison, Calvin took all the classes he could in an effort to grow, knowing he wouldn't earn good time from them based on his sentence. He did it because he wanted to be a better person. During his time in prison, he has changed and found great moral fortitude. He learned to be patient, have humility, show grace to others, and care when he sees people having a tough time. He helps those around him and encourages them to be better and hold themselves to a higher standard than they've accepted for themselves. He has learned to take responsibility for his decisions and knows that every decision he makes is an important one. The Calvin of the late 90s and early 2000s didn't know that. Now he does. He will be an asset to me and our family. Our daughters have waited a long time to truly feel their dad's presence in their lives outside of the prison and are excited to get the chance to experience a life with him here. My sons, who are 8 and 10, are very excited to have Calvin living with us, and I'm eager to have him help shape my sons so they can grow into good men one day because of his influence. He has been on this journey of growing and rehabilitating for 22 years. I know he'll be skilled at helping shape them. The children and I hope you will see fit to grant Calvin's release on parole. I have a home in Mandeville, and we are counting down the days until we can hopefully share it. I'm a property manager and do marketing for a couple businesses, so I am financially independent and capable of supporting Calvin upon his release. He also has his own professional aspirations, and I will emotionally support him while he works toward his goals. I appreciate you all for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I hope you can see that Calvin is no longer the impulsive, hot-headed boy he once was, and that you will grant release to the man he has become. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. All right, Ms. Ratner, would you like to wrap it up?
I would. Thank you, commissioners. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just briefly wrap it up, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I've been representing Calvin for a little over a year, and I've gotten to know him, his fiance, and the whole Couvillion family pretty well in that time. And I can say that Calvin sits before you as a transformed person. He is no longer the reckless and self-serving young man that he was when he committed this crime. He is an example of a remarkable rehabilitation. I think you've heard that from the warden, and you can see it on the record. 3 write-ups in 22 years, Class A trustee. Calvin is remarkable. I cannot imagine what the Rogers family has suffered, and I don't pretend to understand their experience. I think it is my role here to correct the record. My understanding of the record is there was no evidence at this trial that Calvin Couvillion was in any way part of any premeditation within this crime. Calvin and I have discussed this crime again and again and again. In our parole preparations, I have told him, as I tell all of my clients, owning your whole action in the crime is the key. You have to show that you can fully own everything you did on that night. I fully believe that if Calvin had had more of a role than he has owned for you today, he would have said so. I believe that. I've been doing this work for a decade. I think Calvin is being honest with you to the best of his memory. At the same time, Calvin is responsible for the death of Jim Rogers. He owns that responsibility. He lives with it every day. His jury concluded that manslaughter was the appropriate sentence, and then the appropriate conviction, and his judge set his sentence. I believe Calvin has completely transformed in the way he understands his activity at that time. And I hope that you've been able to hear the remorse that he expressed today, as well as Ms. Kaye. I think much more compelling and reflective of Calvin's remorse, much more than his words, are his deeds. He's worked all over this prison. He built the attorney-client visitation room that I've been meeting with him in. Every skill he's developed in here, he immediately turns around and shares it. He's tutored people here in GED and auto body collision repair. He taught himself Spanish in here, and he's interpreted for disciplinary court. And not to curry favor, not to prove that he is not the child that he was when he committed this crime. This is how he is showing his remorse, by serving others. That's how he lives every single day. You heard it from the warden, how Calvin Couvillion shows up every day for the community here. DCI is a better place because Calvin Couvillion is in it. And in the letters that you've received letters of support from Norris Henderson, Calvin Duncan, Matt Pineda. These are individuals who know exactly what it means to come to prison on a homicide conviction and serve others, not only rehabilitate themselves, but help others on their path to rehabilitation, not only successfully re-enter, but help others on the path to re-entry. And they are all telling you that is who Calvin Couvillion is here at DCI. That is who he will be if you choose to release him on parole for February. Calvin is ready to come home. He has the full support of the Parole Project, his fiance, and the whole family sitting behind us. They're ready to support him in any way that he needs. He will not only successfully re-enter society, he will help others re-enter society. He cannot undo what he did. And he has to live with that reality every single day. But he can go out there and help other young people who are struggling to choose the right path. He can go out there and try to stop the next young Calvin Couvillion from hurting the next Jim Rogers. I believe that's what he will do if you release him. I think that's what the people you're hearing from, the warden and others who have successfully re-entered, that's what they're saying. He'll follow any terms that you set. He'll meet any conditions you want to see before release. Calvin Couvillion will make this board proud of a decision to grant his release. And I hope that's the decision that you'll render today. Thank you for hearing from me.
Thank you. All right, time prepared to vote.
Yes.
Ms. Renata.
All right. I want to thank the Rogers family. We do appreciate your travels to be here today and share your thoughts with us. And I made a note in one of the letters that we did get, where the crushing weight of the grief is expressed, that you say he needs to continue his imprisonment until he serves his sentence in full. He owes us that. His debt to us, the Rogers family, remains unpaid. And I sympathize with your feelings there. I don't know how you ever repair them harm. I don't think you can. I mentioned earlier the strong opposition by law enforcement and the district attorney's office. But I also look at the work that he's done, keeping in mind the age he was when this crime was committed. I do believe during his time in prison, he's demonstrated growth and maturity. He's worked to improve his prison community. He has, I made particular note of the hospice volunteer. I know that's very difficult work. Not anybody, just anybody can do that. But that speaks to your character. I listened carefully to Warden Bickham and his remarks, the remarks by your supervisors that are in the record. It's hard, but I would give you a chance. My vote would be to grant conditionally, but you'd have to complete a victim awareness program prior to release. After release, of course, you'll remain on supervision for the duration of your sentence. You're to have no contact whatsoever with the victim's family. You're to perform community service work, speaking to at-risk youth, a minimum of 8 hours every month for the duration of your sentence.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Ms. Jackson.
Ms. Couvillion, I've listened very closely to you, to your fiance, to the Rogers family. And this is really a really difficult case. But my take on this is a little bit different from Mrs. Renat's. I really don't think you have fully owned your level of participation in this case. You say you wish you could express how sorry you are to the Rogers family. Well, you can show them that by saying, I'm going to serve out the sentence that I was given. It's not like you have a life, if you had a life sentence with no possibility of ever getting out, maybe a commutation at some point in the future would be the right thing to do. But you only have 5 more years left on this sentence. And I don't think you really understand the extent to which your release would further harm and traumatize the Rogers family. You know, as I listened to your fiance, she had some wonderful things to say. But I can put myself in the shoes of the Rogers family and say, Jim never will have any of those opportunities. And so if you truly are remorseful, sorry, and if you really do care about the pain that is inflicted on the family, serve out your sentence. Continue to do it where you are. And then when you're released, you'll have the opportunity to do even more good in the world. But for me, because of the nature of the offense, the adamant opposition from the victims, and the fact that you will be released on a mandatory release date within 5 years, my vote today is to deny.
But you have 1 vote to deny, 1 vote to grant. Again, everything's been said. It's a difficult case, difficult. Everything. It's bad. It's bad for everybody involved. I appreciate Rogers family for being here. Appreciate your support for being here. Again, you know, we make these decisions. We see these cases all the time. We see, you know, we hear them, we listen. We always try to make the best decision we can. And it's difficult. It's not easy. Not easy for anybody involved. Again, I'm, you know, taking everything into consideration, taking what you've done in the past, what you've been doing, what you continue to do, your comments, the work you've done. I'm going to vote to grant your parole. You'll have 8 hours of community service. You'll have technical awareness. You'll have a curfew from 10 p to 6 a. And no contact with the victim's family. That's my vote for today. So 2 votes to grant, 1 to deny. Today your parole's been granted. Good luck to you.
Thank you all so much.